Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Here we have a replication of Downs, Milberger's, Bedronsky, and Witherspoon's The Effects of Video Self-Evaluation on Skills Acquisition with Yoga Postures. But before we start, each member of the team, researcher or participant, will introduce themselves. Hi everyone, my name is Adam Garcia, and I am a researcher and participant for this study.
My name is Allison Jett, and I am also a researcher and a participant for this study.
Hi, my name is Ricardo, and I will also be acting as a participant and as a researcher for this replication project.
Hello, my name is Tyler Zabel, and I will be acting as a participant and a researcher for this study. The dependent variable for our study is yoga and yoga poses. Yoga is a holistic and ancient discipline that is multidimensional. What that means is that yoga is good for your body and mind. Through the use of postures and movements, breathing exercises, relaxation, and mindfulness and meditation, yoga helps with a person's physical and mental health. Yoga also helps your physical body in a great many ways, such as increasing your balance, helping keep kidney functions regular, lowering your cholesterol, and helping get a better night's sleep. A recent study by Ross and Thomas found that other than physical strength, yoga is more beneficial for your physical health than exercise. Yoga also has many great advantages for your mental health. Yoga can help reduce depression and anxiety, help handle stress, and overall increase your quality of life. Because of all these advantages for yoga, we felt that more people should be aware of its effects. Our dependent variable was video self-feedback. Video feedback is when an instructor films the client performing the target behavior. The client then watches the video of themselves with the instructor. The instructor then provides the client with feedback on what they did well and also what they could work on for next time. Video feedback has been used for a variety of things, such as teaching teens with ASD, vocational skills such as gardening, decreasing social anxiety that comes from public speaking, and increasing positive parenting. The type of feedback that we'll be using in our study is video self-feedback. We still have the videos of ourselves doing the target behavior of yoga poses, but we will be self-evaluating how we did in the video. The purpose of our current study is to attempt to replicate the results of the study done by Downs et al. In 2015. The study by Downs et al. Was conducted to see if video self-evaluation will increase yoga pose performances. They decided to use self-evaluation with yoga because there had been very few studies on the use of self-evaluation in sports or recreational activities. Downs et al. Had participants video themselves attempting certain yoga poses and then had them score themselves according to a task analysis of steps that comprise each pose. We are attempting to replicate this study with more participants of varying demographics to see if we will come to the same results.
And again, the participants for this project were Tyler, Allison, Adam, and myself, Ricardo. And each of us, we could decide the setting where we wanted to do the yoga poses. And just because it was less time consuming, we all decided that in our home would be the best setting to do the videos. And the materials that we needed, they weren't complicated at all. It's something that everyone has in their home. It was either a yoga mat, or if we didn't have that, we could use a towel. We needed that, and then we needed a video recording device that could have been an iPad, a computer, a phone, or even a video camera. And after we recorded ourselves, we uploaded it to the Google Drive, and then we watched it, and then we needed the computer for data collection. The behavioral definition that we decided on is each participant stands on the yoga mat or towel and imitates exactly each step of the task analysis for a minimum duration of 5 seconds. And if they did that, then that meant that that step was successful.
For data collection of all of our yoga poses were videoed and shared to the Google Drive. We used the Google Drive for ease of access for all of the researchers / participants. Each video was scored by either the participant or another participant in the group on a task analysis. This was important for during like baseline versus treatment when it varied on who was collecting data. Each task analysis had all the steps for each yoga pose broken down to not only teach the pose, but to also allow for data collection of each step within a pose. The participants were to score each step as correct or incorrect, as whether or not they had done the step as described or they had not. And then we have included each task analysis for you in our presentation, and that will be showed later on. Once we had scored the videos, we calculated % correct of each step, or of all the steps, and this percentage was included in a data sheet that we created in Google Sheets. We again used Google Sheets for convenient access for everyone so that we could input data for each other for baseline phases, and we could compare data and discuss whether or not we should move on to each phases. This also made it convenient for the collection of IOA and treatment fidelity data to ensure that we were replicating the project to the best of our ability. For the design of our study, the original study used a multiple baseline design across behaviors for each participant and then was replicated over several participants. And we did the same. We used the multiple baseline across behaviors, and then we replicated it with multiple participants. In this case, there were 4 of us. Each participant attempted 3 different yoga poses and were evaluated by the other participant or by themselves through video recording. And each pose in baseline would move into treatment upon the data points showing a stable or decreasing trend. And then the next pose would enter the treatment phase successively following, again with the stable data or a decreasing trend. And it would create a stair-step pattern, as you will see later in our results. Then we would move into maintenance phase if the data showed an increasing or stable trend as well. This is one of our task analysis. The first pose is the tree pose. For step 1, you stand with your big toe and heels touching. Step 2, you stand with your hands by your side of your body. Step 3, you bend your right leg, placing right foot on the inner thigh between crotch and knee. Toes of the foot are pointed down. Raise arms without bending above head. Press the right and left palms together and hold the pose for 30 seconds. You had to complete each of these steps to mark it as correct, and if you got an error, then it decreased your % correct in the end. This is the task analysis for the Warrior 2 pose. The steps include standing with the big toes and heels touching. You exhale and take a step forward till your feet are 3.5 to 4 feet apart. You raise your arms to shoulder height so that they are parallel to the floor. Palms are facing down towards the floor. Then you turn your foot 90 degrees to the left, align the heel of the right foot with the heel of the left foot, still the 3.5 to 4 feet apart. Bend the left knee over the left ankle until the shin is perpendicular to the floor. Bring the left thigh as parallel to the floor as possible, keeping the shoulders directly above the pelvis. You turn your head to the left and look over the fingers, and again hold the pose for 30 seconds. This is demonstrated in the image. The third and final pose that we did is called Downward Dog. You begin with your hands and knees on the floor. You move your knees directly below the hips. You place your feet and knees shoulder width apart. You move your hands 5 inches from your shoulders, forward from your shoulders. your palms down on the floor, fingers spread apart so that your index fingers are parallel, which means you're going to kind of turn your hands outwards. You're going to lift your knees off the floor until they are completely extended, but do not lock them. A lot of information that we found said that that would cause you to become lightheaded or pass out. And then you push your heels towards the floor and hold the pose for 30 seconds.
Now that you've seen the task analysis, next up is an example of the task analysis in action. But before we provide that, we want you to know that there's a very important factor, which is participant consent. You have to make sure that you have this before doing any process. You have to make sure you have it written that you're going to be sharing it, which we have, and this basically keeps you out from any legal issues. So again, here's our video.
During baseline, we each videoed ourselves attempting each of the 3 poses based off the definition. Just to be clear, we did not use the task analyses just yet. In this phase, we did not want to score our own videos either. This allowed us to ensure that we were not accidentally implementing the treatment phase during baseline, and it kept it separate. Each participant would send their videos via the Google Drive to the other participants for scoring. And once the other participants had scored the videos based off those task analyses, they would input the data into Google Sheets so that we could still evaluate when we needed to move into the treatment phase. This was done without any feedback to one another regarding the pose itself. For the treatment phase, our treatment was the implementation of video self-evaluation. This time, after we videoed each of our yoga poses, we immediately scored ourselves on the task analyses. This self-evaluation provided us with immediate feedback on the pose. The task analyses showed which steps we were struggling with or which ones we were consistently performing well. The data was then recorded into Google Sheets, and we analyzed it daily or upon following each of our sessions to determine if progress was being made and whether or not the pose was ready to move into the next phase, whether it be from baseline to treatment or treatment to maintenance. We collected inter-observer agreement throughout our study. This was relatively convenient considering we were already sending all of our videos to the Google Drive, which made it easy for other participants to access. Due to the restrictions of the study, though, the participants were acting as researchers, so inter-observer agreement had to be done by the other participants instead of a blind third party as done in the original study. We collected IOA on 2 different sessions for each of the participants. For Allison, the inter-observer agreement was 94%. For Adam, it was 100. For Ricardo, it was 91. And for Tyler, it was 94. So this shows that we were accurately scoring ourselves on our own task analyses throughout the study.
Now we move on to treatment fidelity, and it's basically just strategies that's going to make the intervention be accurate and consistent, and that it's going to be implemented as planned and everyone's on the same page. The way we did that, each participant observed each other's videos and then collected the data that they saw for each step. And then if any questions arise, the team met to extinguish any doubts and on how to collect data, or if they had any questions. And we did that every Wednesday. We did it weekly.
For our results, I will first tell you about Ricardo and Adam's and then show you their graphs and then do the same for Tyler and Allison's. Our results of our study mimicked that of the original study. Some participants had moderate and modest increases, while others had substantial increases in skill acquisition. For Ricardo's results, he had a modest increase in skill acquisition. For his first pose, the tree pose, he ranged from 38 to 100% throughout baseline and treatment. His average percent correct on the task analysis was 47%, and during self-evaluation, he was getting about 64.75%, which shows a modest increase. For pose 2, his Warrior 2 pose, he ranged from 45% to 73%. He had a baseline average of 47.2%, and during treatment, the self-evaluation phase, he had an average of 59.60%. On his third pose, the downward dog, he was ranging from 38% to 88%. He had a baseline average of 50.3% and a self-evaluation average of 79.3%, which was a much greater increase than some of the others. For Adam's results, he only had a moderate increase in skill acquisition. His first pose was the tree pose as well, which ranged from 38 to 75% between baseline and treatment. His baseline average was 47%. His self-evaluation treatment phase averaged 59.22%. For his second pose, the Warrior 2 pose, he ranged from 36% to 91%. His baseline average was 45%, and his self-evaluation average was 64.75%, which showed a little bit greater increase than some of Ricardo's results. For pose 3, he had a range, which is downward dog, he had a range of 63% to 88%, a baseline average of 60.83%, and a self-evaluation average of 70%. These are the graphs for both Ricardo on the left and Adam on the right. They show each of the 3 poses across each participant. Ricardo had stable data in his first pose for baseline, so we went ahead and moved to treatment. For some of his other poses, due to time restraints and convenience, we went ahead and moved to the next phase despite not quite meeting the criteria of a downward trend. It's possible that due to success with other yoga poses that it increased his abilities in the later poses. For Adam, he also had downward trends and stable data across, and that is why he moved into the next phase. And it shows in the maintenance phase that both of them still increased or maintained the skill. Next is Tyler's results. Tyler and Allison both had a substantial increase in their skill acquisition over the 3 yoga poses. For Tyler's first pose, the tree pose, he ranged from 25% to 88% with a baseline average of 37.5%. 75% and a self-evaluation average of 71%, which is a much more dramatic difference between the two phases than Ricardo and Adam had. For pose 2, the Warrior 2 pose, his range was 27% to 63% between the two phases. His baseline average was 32.4%. His self-evaluation average was 54.38%. Again, a little more substantial difference between the two phases than Adam and Ricardo showed. For the third pose, his downward dog, his range was 38% to 100%. His baseline average was 50.33%, and his treatment of self-evaluation averaged 94%. For Allison's result, there was also a substantial increase in skill acquisition. Her first pose was the downward dog pose. She had a range of 38% to 100% with a baseline average of 46% and a treatment average of 92.75%, which shows that greater increase in skill acquisition that Tyler also had. For her second pose, the tree pose, she ranged from 50% to 88%. She had a baseline average of 50% and a self-evaluation average of 83.67%. On her final pose, the Warrior 2 pose, she had a range of 36 to 82%. She had a baseline average of 42.11% and a self-evaluation average of 73%. These are the graphs for Tyler and Allison. Tyler's is on the left and Allison is on the right. For each pose, you can see when we moved into each phase and that in maintenance, they maintained the behaviors overall. If you need a moment to review the graphs, feel free to take a second and pause the video here.
In conclusion, compared to the baseline data, Ricardo's performance modestly increased, while Adam's performance moderately increased, and even Tyler's and Allison's performance substantially increased. So according to Downs and her team, this might actually be a good way to get feedback or even increase performance. Please note that because of limitations, more research should be conducted to see whether or not video self-evaluations really increase performance, and even then, what type of performance other than just yoga poses. Next up, limitations. The one thing researchers do not like. Well, for our project, our limitations was we weren't allowed to use outside resources. So for example, like certified instructors, we couldn't use that. We had to use our own judgment, research our own online. Pretty much that was basically what we were stuck with. As for the location, in Downs, they did everything at the university in a lab. As for us, we did it in our own homes. This changes everything because you're in the comfort of your own home versus being in a lab. So that could alter your behavior, whether or not you do better, you do worse. Factors we can look into. Even for materials used, they use professional materials like professional mats. As for us, we use whatever we could. It could be like the tile, wooden floors, stuff like that. As for the task analysis, we had to create our own, and we didn't have a certified instructor that could help us create our task analysis. But as you've seen, what our task analysis had looked like, it wasn't made by the certified instructor. It's just based on our own judgment. Another limitation was the researchers being participants. By that I mean we were the researchers, and we were also the participants. As for in Downs study, they had to choose their own participants. So they got to choose from a big box out of the university to see who's right for their study. We were pretty limited on that. Oh, and the biggest thing is motivation. According to Downs, their motivation was based on more like they wanted to learn more of like the yoga poses and stuff like that. But for us, our motivation was, hey, I want a good grade. I'm going to give it my all. That does change things. Yeah, I know. One limitation that we had and also Downs had were the type of poses. We chose the same poses as Downs, but the problem is there were so many to choose from. So there could be more research conducted on so many number of poses. And even then, the recreational activities as well. According to Downs, they used only yoga. So did we, because we were replicating a study. In this sense, there could be more series of studies conducted on, say, different sports and stuff like that. So again, these limitations did limit us, but again, this is just a replication of Downs' study. Last up, we have our references. Please take a moment to pause the video so that you can be able to copy these if you choose to do more research of your own. We hope you all enjoyed watching this replication video. Thanks for watching.